The galaxy had many monsters, but none were as feared as the Undying. He was the Dragon Emperor of the Scorched Dominion, and he had ruled for 3,000 years. His species, were massive creatures that looked like dragons from old Earth legends. They stood 12 feet tall with black scales that could stop bullets and plasma fire. Their claws could cut through steel like paper. Their teeth could crush bones into dust. Sat on his throne and watched the stars burn. His throne was special. It was built from the bones of his enemies, real bones. They had a tradition of keeping the skeletons of those they defeated. They used these bones to build furniture, walls, and monuments. His throne contained the remains of 17 kings, 8 presidents, and many other leaders who had tried to challenge him. The throne room was huge. It could hold 10,000 soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder. The ceiling was so high that clouds sometimes formed inside on humid days. Torches the size of trees lit the space with orange fire. The walls were covered with weapons taken from conquered worlds. Swords, guns, laser rifles, and things that humans had no names for. No one came to see the Dragon Emperor without being invited. The last person who tried was an ambassador from the Federation. They were a peaceful species who believed in talking instead of fighting. They sent their best diplomat to negotiate with. The Dragon Emperor ate him. Not quickly, not kindly. He ate the ambassador over 3 days while the whole government watched through a video screen. After that, no one came to the Scorched Dominion unless they had no choice. They had conquered over 2,000 worlds. They did not rule these worlds with wisdom or fairness. They ruled with fire and fear. If a planet paid its taxes and caused no trouble, they left it alone. If a planet resisted, they burned it. Simple rules, easy to understand. The galaxy had learned to stay away from space. On this particular evening was eating his dinner. They did not stop eating for business. They considered it rude to let food get cold. The feast before the emperor could have fed a small army. There were roasted animals from 6 different planets. There were vegetables in colors that did not exist on Earth. There were breads and soups and sauces and things that bubbled and steamed. Ate slowly. He had learned patience over his long life. There was no need to rush when you were immortal. His chief advisor, a named, stood nearby with a tablet in his clawed hands. Was old by standards, nearly 2,000 years. He had served 3 dragon emperors before. He knew how to survive in a court where failure meant death. "My emperor," said carefully, "our sensors have detected a ship entering our space." Did not look up from his meal. "What kind of ship?" "Small, my emperor, very small. Less than 200 meters long. It appears to be human." Now looked up. His golden eyes, each one the size of a dinner plate, showed a spark of interest. "Human. Those are the new ones, yes. The species that learned to travel between stars only 60 years ago." "Yes, my emperor, they are young, they are weak. They have no military power worth mentioning." "Then why are they in my space?" Checked his tablet. "It appears to be an accident, my emperor. They came through a hyperspace lane that was not properly mapped. Their ship shows damage. They may have had no control over where they ended up." Return to his food. "Bring them to me." "All of them, my emperor." "All of them. I wish to see these humans. I have heard they taste interesting." Bowed and left to carry out the order. The human ship was called the Wanderer. It was a cargo vessel that carried supplies between human colonies. Nothing special, nothing important. The captain was a woman named Laura who had been flying cargo ships for 15 years. She had a crew of 4 others, a pilot named, an engineer named Grace Taylor, a medical officer named Henry Clark, and a cook named Danny Cole. When the warship appeared beside them, Captain knew they were dead. The ship was 15 kilometers long. It could have swallowed the Wanderer without noticing. She had heard stories about the Dragon Emperor. Everyone had heard stories. They were the kind of stories that made children cry at night. The soldiers boarded their ship without asking permission. They were huge and terrifying, with scales like armor and claws like swords. They spoke in a language the ship's computer could barely translate. "You will come with us," the lead soldier said. "The Emperor wishes to see you." Captain tried to stay calm. She was responsible for her crew. She had to protect them if she could. "We meant no disrespect. Our ship was damaged. We did not choose to come here." The soldier did not care about her explanation. "You will come with us now, or you will die here. Choose." There was no real choice. The 5 humans followed the soldiers onto a shuttle that took them down to the planet below. The planet was called, and it was the heart of the Scorched Dominion. From space, it looked like a ball of fire and smoke. Massive factories covered the surface, building weapons and ships for the military. The sky was always red from the light of the forges. The shuttle landed near the Emperor's palace. Palace was not the right word for it. It was more like a mountain that had been carved into a building. It rose 5 kilometers into the red sky, and it was covered with spikes and towers and weapons that could destroy cities. The humans were marched through corridors made of black stone. They passed statues of warriors killing various aliens. They passed displays of skulls arranged by size and species. They passed guards who looked at them the way a cat looks at mice. Finally, they reached the throne room. The doors were 50 meters tall and made of metal that glowed with heat. They opened slowly, revealing the massive space beyond. And there, at the far end, sitting on his throne of bones, was the Undying. Captain felt her legs go weak. The stories had not prepared her for the reality. The Dragon Emperor was the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. His scales were so black they seemed to eat the light. His eyes burned like twin suns. His claws left scratches in the stone floor as he shifted on his throne. "Bring them closer," commanded. The soldiers pushed the humans forward until they stood at the base of the steps leading up to the throne. The smell of food filled the air. The Emperor's feast was spread out beside him, still steaming, still waiting. 4 of the 5 humans fell to their knees immediately. They trembled. They cried. They begged for their lives in voices that shook with terror. But the 5th human, the cook named Danny Cole, did not kneel. He stood there looking at the feast with an expression that had nothing to do with fear. He looked hungry. Danny Cole was not a brave man. He had never fought in a war. He had never faced danger with a weapon in his hand. He was just a cook who had spent his whole life in the kitchens of cargo ships, trying to make bad food taste good for crews who never said thank you. He was 34 years old. He had grown up in a small town in Ohio where nothing exciting ever happened. His mother had taught him to cook when he was 6 years old. She always said that food was the most important thing in the world, not because people needed to eat to live. That was obvious. Food was important because it brought people together. It made strangers into friends. It made enemies into something less than enemies. Danny had taken those lessons with him into space. He had cooked on 12 different ships over 15 years. He had learned to make meals from strange ingredients. He had learned to work with limited supplies and broken equipment. He had learned that a good meal could change the mood of an entire crew. Right now, standing in front of the Dragon Emperor, Danny was not thinking about fear or death or the political situation. He was thinking about the fact that he had not eaten in 18 hours. Their ship had been pulled through that hyperspace accident during lunch. Danny had been about to serve soup when the alarm started screaming. Then they were here in space, and everything had happened so fast. The boarding, the soldiers, the march through the palace. No one had offered them food or water. Danny's stomach was empty, and in front of him was the most amazing feast he had ever seen. The Dragon Emperor spoke, his voice like rocks grinding together. "You stand before the Undying, ruler of the Scorched Dominion, conqueror of 2,000 worlds. You have entered my space without permission. You have interrupted my meal. Tell me why I should not kill you all and add your bones to my collection." Captain spoke first, her voice shaking but clear. "Great Emperor, we meant no disrespect. Our ship was damaged. We came here by accident. We ask only for mercy and safe passage out of your territory." The pilot added his own plea. "We have nothing of value, mighty one. We are just simple traders. We have families waiting for us back home." Grace Taylor was crying too hard to speak. Henry Clark was praying in a whisper, his eyes closed, his hands pressed together. Listened to their begging with the patience of someone who had heard it all before. He had heard the pleas of kings and generals. He had heard the screams of entire civilizations. These humans were no different from the countless others who had stood where they stood. But then his eyes moved to the one human who was not begging, the one who stood straight and looked not at the emperor but at the food. "You," said, pointing one massive claw at Danny. "Why do you not kneel? Why do you not beg for your life like the others?" Danny pulled his eyes away from the feast with difficulty. He looked up at the Dragon Emperor and felt something strange. He was scared, of course. Anyone would be scared. But the fear was distant, like a sound from another room. Closer and louder was the emptiness in his stomach. "Sorry," Danny said. "I was looking at your food." The throne room went quiet. The guards stopped moving. Captain made a small sound of horror. Leaned forward on his throne. "You were looking at my food." "Yes, it looks really good. I haven't eaten since yesterday. Our food storage broke when we got pulled through that hyperspace thing. Everything spoiled." "You stand before death itself, and you think about eating." Danny shrugged. It was a small movement, but it seemed very large in that silent room. "I'm hungry. I can't help it. My grandmother always said that an empty stomach makes everything worse. She was right. I'd probably be more scared if I'd had breakfast." Did not know what to do with this. He had seen many things in 3,000 years. He had seen courage that made him respect his enemies. He had seen cowardice that made him sick with disgust. He had seen madness that made him curious. But he had never seen someone look at his dinner table while facing death. "You are either very brave or very stupid," the Emperor said. "Probably stupid," Danny admitted. "I'm not smart about most things, but I know food, I know cooking. And I know that's a lot of food for one person, even if you are really big. Are you going to finish all of it?" Captain grabbed Danny's arm. "Danny, stop talking, please just stop." But Danny did not stop. He could not stop. Something about the situation had broken the normal rules in his brain. Fear was supposed to make him quiet. Instead, it had made him honest. "That roasted thing, the purple one," Danny continued, pointing at the feast. "I can smell it from here. It's got some kind of herb crust, right? And those vegetables look like they were grilled, not boiled, which is the right way to do it. Whoever cooked this knows what they're doing, but there's too much food. Way too much. You can't eat all of it yourself, so what happens to the leftovers? Do you throw them away? Because that's wasteful. Where I come from, we don't waste food." Sat back on his throne. His golden eyes studied Danny with new interest. "You would eat from my table. If your offering seems better than letting it go to waste. I could kill you for your disrespect." "You could," Danny agreed, "but then who would eat the leftovers?" There was a long moment of silence. The guards waited for the order to kill. Captain waited for the end. The other crew members had stopped crying because they were too confused to know what was happening. Then did something that no one expected. He laughed. The laugh was not a nice sound. It was deep and rough, like an earthquake that had learned to find things funny. It filled the throne room and echoed off the bone walls. The guards looked at each other in shock. They had never heard their emperor laugh, not once in their entire lives. "You amuse me, little human," said when he finished laughing. "You amuse me greatly. Very well, come sit, eat." He gestured to the feast with one massive arm. Danny walked forward without hesitation. Captain tried to grab him again, but he slipped out of her grip. He walked right up to the Emperor's table, climbed onto a chair that was much too big for him, and began to serve himself. "The rest of you may approach as well," said to the other humans, "if you are hungry." Captain did not know what to do. This was not how things were supposed to go. You did not sit down to dinner with the Dragon Emperor. You died or you escaped, but you did not eat his food. But her crew was hungry, and Danny was already filling his plate with strange alien dishes, making sounds of appreciation as he tasted each one. "Come on," Danny called to them. "It's good, really good. You should try the purple thing." Slowly, carefully, the other humans approached the table. They sat down on chairs built for giants. They reached for food with trembling hands, and watched them with golden eyes that held something new, not hunger for killing, not anger at their intrusion. Curiosity. The meal lasted for 3 hours. Danny ate like someone who had been starving because he had been, but he did not eat quietly. He talked. He asked questions. He commented on every dish like he was writing a review for a restaurant guide. "This meat is good," Danny said, chewing thoughtfully. "What animal does it come from?" Found himself answering, which was strange. He never answered questions. People answered his questions, but there was something about the way Danny asked that made it seem natural to respond. "It is called a beast," the Emperor said. "They live on the third moon of our home world, very dangerous to hunt. Many have died trying to catch them." "Worth the danger," Danny said. "The flavor is rich, deep. It's been slow-cooked, right? Maybe 8 hours. You can tell because the meat falls apart when you touch it with a fork." 12 hours, corrected. "My chef insists on 12 hours for proper tenderness." 12 is even better. Danny took another bite. "But it's a little dry in the center. That happens when you cook at too high a temperature. Lower heat for a longer time would keep more moisture in." Captain nearly choked on her food. She could not believe what she was hearing. Danny was criticizing the Dragon Emperor's chef, the Dragon Emperor who had eaten an ambassador for annoying him, the Dragon Emperor who had conquered 2,000 worlds with fire and death. But did not seem angry. He seemed interested. "You know about cooking," the Emperor observed. "It's my job," Danny said. "Been doing it my whole life. My mother taught me when I was young. She always said that cooking is like love. You have to give it time and attention. You have to care about what you're making. If you rush it or ignore it, the food knows. The food always knows." A strange philosophy. Maybe, but it works. Good food makes people happy. Happy people are easier to deal with. I've seen crews that were ready to kill each other calm down after a good meal. I've seen enemies share bread and become friends. Food is powerful. Considered this. He had never thought about food as anything other than fuel, something to fill his stomach so he could continue his work of ruling and conquering. But this human spoke about food like it was a weapon, a different kind of weapon than the ones they used, but a weapon all the same. "Tell me more," the Emperor said. "Tell me about human food." So Danny told him. He talked about the foods of Earth. He talked about Italian pasta that had been made the same way for hundreds of years. He talked about Japanese sushi that was as much art as it was cooking. He talked about Indian curries that used spices from a dozen different regions. He talked about Mexican dishes that combined simple ingredients into complex flavors. He talked about American barbecue that took 2 days to prepare properly. Listened. He did not interrupt. He did not threaten. He just listened while Danny talked about a subject that clearly meant everything to him. The other humans stayed quiet. They ate carefully and watched the strange conversation happen. Captain was still waiting for the moment when everything would go wrong, when would get bored or angry and kill them all. But that moment did not come. When the meal was finally over, Danny sat back in his oversized chair and sighed with satisfaction. "Thank you for the food. That was really good. Your chef is talented. With a few adjustments, they could be even better." "You believe you could teach my chef to improve?" asked. "Maybe. Cooking is about sharing knowledge. Every cook learns from other cooks. That's how recipes travel from one place to another. That's how food gets better over time. Nobody becomes great by keeping secrets." Was quiet for a long moment. His golden eyes stared at Danny with an expression that the human could not read. Then the Emperor made a decision. "You will stay here," said. The words fell like stones into water. Captain stood up so fast that she knocked her chair over. "What?" "The cook will stay here. He will work in my kitchen. He will prepare meals for me." "You can't keep him," Captain said. The fear was still in her voice, but there was anger now too. Danny was part of her crew, her responsibility. "He's a member of my crew. I won't leave him behind." "You will leave him behind or you will all die here," said calmly. "These are your only options. The cook stays. The rest of you may go. Your ship will be repaired and you will be given safe passage out of my territory." "That's kidnapping," said. He was shaking, but he said it anyway. "That is the price of your lives," replied. "I am being generous. Normally I would kill all of you and take what I wanted anyway, but the cook has amused me. He has shown me something new. For that, I am willing to let the rest of you live." Captain turned to Danny. "Danny, say something. Tell him you won't do it." Danny was quiet. He looked at his captain, and then at the dragon emperor on his throne of bones. He thought about his life. He had no family back home. His parents were dead. He had no wife, no children, no close friends. He had only his work and his love of cooking. "It's okay," Danny said quietly. "What?" "It's okay, Laura, I'll stay." "Danny, you can't be serious. This is insane. He's a monster. He's killed millions of people." "Maybe," Danny said, "but he also just sat and listened to me talk about food for 2 hours. When's the last time anyone did that? When's the last time anyone cared about what I had to say?" Captain did not have an answer. "Go home," Danny said. "Tell people what happened here. Don't try to rescue me. I'll be fine. I'll just do what I always do. I'll cook." Watch this exchange with interest. He had expected the cook to resist. He had expected begging and crying and useless attempts to escape. Instead, the human accepted his fate with something that looked almost like peace. "You are strange," the Emperor said to Danny, "even for a human." "Probably," Danny agreed. "Most people think I'm weird. I care too much about food and not enough about other things." "That is not a weakness, that is focus." Danny smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "My mother used to say the same thing." The guards escorted the other humans back to their ship. Captain looked back at Danny one last time as she left the throne room. He waved at her, a small wave, a goodbye wave. Then the doors closed, and Danny Cole was alone with the Dragon Emperor. "So," Danny said, looking around the massive throne room, "where's the kitchen?" The kitchen of the Dragon Emperor was the biggest cooking space Danny had ever seen. It was the size of a football stadium, with ovens that could roast whole animals and stoves that burned with flames hot enough to melt steel. 50 cooks worked there every day, preparing meals for the emperor and his court. The head chef was named. He had been cooking for 300 years, and he did not like Danny. He did not like humans in general. He especially did not like the idea of a small, weak human telling him how to do his job. "You are a pet," said to Danny on his first day. "The emperor finds you amusing. When he gets bored, he will eat you. Until then, stay out of my way." Danny did not argue. He found a small corner of the kitchen and started to work. He asked for simple ingredients, things that were similar to what he knew from Earth, vegetables that could be roasted, meat that could be grilled, grains that could be made into bread. The other cooks ignored him. Some of them laughed at his small hands and his strange techniques. They thought human cooking was primitive. Why use fire when you had plasma cookers? Why use knives when you had molecular slicers? Why spend hours preparing something that could be made in minutes? Danny did not explain, he just cooked. He made simple things at first. A soup with vegetables cut by hand. A piece of meat seasoned with spices he had found in the storage rooms. Bread that he baked in a regular oven instead of the instant bread machine that they used. No one tasted his food. No one paid attention to what he was doing. He was invisible in that huge kitchen, just a small human making his strange little dishes. A week passed, then 2 weeks. Danny learned the kitchen. He learned which ingredients were safe for humans and which would kill him. He learned which cooks were mean and which ones just did not care about him. He learned the schedule of meals, the preferences of the emperor, the politics of the kitchen staff. And he practiced. Every day he practiced. He adapted his recipes to alien ingredients. He tested combinations that no human had ever tried. He made mistakes and learned from them. Slowly, his dishes got better. On the 15th day, something happened that changed everything. Was preparing the emperor's dinner. It was supposed to be a simple meal, roasted beast with a sauce made from fermented berries, but something went wrong. The sauce burned. The meat was overcooked. The vegetables were cold by the time everything else was ready. Stood in front of his ruined meal with fear in his eyes. A bad meal would make the emperor angry. An angry emperor might kill someone. That someone might be. Danny walked over without being asked. He looked at the disaster and made a quick decision. "I can fix this," he said. Laughed bitterly. "You cannot fix this. It is ruined. I am dead." "Trust me," Danny said. "Give me 30 minutes." There was no reason for to trust a human, but he had no other options. The meal was due to be served soon. Stepped back and let Danny work. Danny moved fast. He cut away the burned parts of the meat and sliced the rest into thin pieces. He made a new sauce using different ingredients, something lighter and simpler that would hide the mistakes. He reheated the vegetables with care, adding oil and herbs to bring back their flavor. He arranged everything on a new plate with attention to how it looked, not just how it tasted. 28 minutes later, Danny handed the plate to the server who would take it to the emperor. "It's not perfect," Danny said, "but it's good. He won't be angry." Watched the server leave with the plate. He waited. Everyone in the kitchen waited. They expected screaming. They expected guards coming to drag someone away to be punished. Instead, a message came back from the throne room. The emperor wanted to speak with whoever had prepared his meal. Looked at Danny. Danny looked at. Neither of them knew what to do. "Go," said finally. "He asked for the cook. You cooked it." Danny walked to the throne room alone. His heart was beating fast. He had taken a big risk. If the emperor had not liked the food, Danny would be dead. But he had trusted his skills. He had trusted his training. He had trusted what his mother had taught him so many years ago. Was sitting on his throne, the empty plate on a table beside him. His golden eyes followed Danny as the human approached. "You made this," the emperor said. "It was not a question." "Yes." "It was different from what I usually eat." "Yes, there was a problem in the kitchen. I had to adapt." "Adapt," repeated the word like he was tasting it. "You took something that was broken and made it work. You changed your plan when the old plan failed." "That's what cooking is," Danny said. "Things go wrong all the time. Ingredients are missing. Equipment breaks. The key is not to panic. The key is to think about what you have and what you can do with it." Was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer almost, less like grinding rocks and more like distant thunder. "Humans have been a species for how long?" "About 200,000 years," Danny said. "Maybe a little more." "My species has existed for 40 million years. We have conquered most of the galaxy. We have destroyed civilizations that were ancient when your ancestors were still living in trees. And yet, in all that time, we have never learned what you just described." "What do you mean?" "Adaptation, flexibility, the ability to change when things go wrong." Looked at his clawed hands. "Do not adapt. We are too strong to need adaptation. When something does not work, we destroy it and try again with more force. When enemies resist, we burn them until they stop resisting. We have never learned to think around problems because we have always been powerful enough to go through them." Danny did not know what to say. He was just a cook. He did not understand politics or war or the psychology of ancient alien species. That meal, continued, was the best thing I have eaten in 200 years, not because of the ingredients, not because of the technique, because it was made by someone who saw a problem and solved it with creativity instead of power. I just didn't want anyone to get in trouble, Danny said honestly. And that is exactly my point. The Emperor leaned forward. You cared about others. You used your skills to help, not to dominate. This is not weakness, as I always believed. This is a different kind of strength. From that day forward, Danny Cole became the personal chef of the Dragon Emperor. Not just a cook in the kitchen, but the one who prepared every meal that ate. Was not happy about this, but he was also not dead, so he accepted the situation. Danny continued to cook. He continued to adapt, and slowly, without realizing it, he began to change the most feared creature in the galaxy. 50 years passed. Danny Cole grew old in the palace of the Dragon Emperor. His hair turned white. His hands became slower. His eyes needed glasses that a scientist made for him specially, but he never stopped cooking. The changes in the Scorched Dominion did not happen quickly. They happened slowly, like water wearing away stone, one meal at a time, one conversation at a time, one small moment of connection at a time. It started with the meals themselves. Danny introduced the concept of eating together, not just the Emperor eating alone while servants stood nearby. Real meals where people sat at the same table and shared food and talked to each other. The first time Danny suggested this was confused. Why would I eat with others? I am the Emperor. I eat alone. On Earth, we have a saying, Danny replied. You can learn more about a person in an hour of eating together than in a year of conversations. Food makes people honest. When you're enjoying a good meal, you let your guard down. You talk about real things. Tried it. He invited his chief advisor to dinner. They ate together while Danny served dish after dish. By the end of the meal, and had talked more openly than they had in 500 years of working together. That was strange, said afterward, but not unpleasant. Do it again, Danny suggested. Invite different people, build relationships. Food is how humans make friends. Did not need friends. He was the Dragon Emperor, but he was also curious. And Danny's food was delicious, so he kept inviting people to dinner. Over the years, those dinners became famous throughout the Dominion. An invitation to eat with the Emperor was no longer a death sentence. It was an honor. Ambassadors from conquered worlds came to the palace not to beg for mercy, but to share a meal and discuss their needs. The violence did not stop completely. There were still warriors, but it decreased. Found that he preferred solving problems through conversation rather than destruction. It was more interesting, more challenging, and the food was always better when he was in a good mood. Danny also changed the kitchen. He trained the cooks in human techniques. He taught them about flavor combinations and presentation and the importance of cooking with care. Who had once called Danny a pet became his best student. The old chef learned that there was more to cooking than following recipes. There was art. There was love. You changed everything, said one day, watching Danny prepare a meal for the Emperor's birthday celebration. Not just the kitchen, everything. I just cooked, Danny said. That's all I know how to do. No, you brought something to us that we did not have. You showed us that there are other ways to be powerful, that feeding someone can be as important as conquering them. Danny smiled. His old face was covered with wrinkles now, but his eyes still lit up when he talked about food. My mother used to say that the stomach has no pride. Fill it well, and even enemies become friends. I never really understood what she meant until I came here. The news of what was happening in the Scorched Dominion spread across the galaxy. People heard stories about the Dragon Emperor who had dinner parties, about the human cook who had tamed the most feared monster in the universe, about a brutal empire that was slowly becoming something else. Other species began to approach the Dominion, not to fight, not to surrender, but to trade, to talk, to share recipes. They discovered that they enjoyed being hosts more than they had ever enjoyed being conquerors. There was something satisfying about feeding guests, about seeing them enjoy meals prepared with care. Captain Laura returned to 30 years after she had left Danny behind. She was old now too, retired from space travel, but she had never forgotten the cook who had saved her crew by asking for leftovers. She found Danny in the kitchen, teaching a young how to make pasta, real pasta with flour and eggs and a rolling pin. The young was struggling with the dough, his massive claws not suited for the delicate work. "Smaller movements," Danny said patiently. "Don't fight the dough, work with it. Let it tell you what it needs." "Danny," Laura said from the doorway. He turned around and his face broke into a huge smile. "Laura, you came back." They hugged for a long time. Two old humans in a kitchen built for giants, surrounded by the smells of cooking food. "I had to see it for myself," Laura said. "The stories they tell about this place, about you, I didn't believe them." "They're probably exaggerated," Danny said. "I just cook. That's all I've ever done." "You changed an empire." "I made some good dinners. The empire changed itself." That night there was a special meal in the throne room. Sat at the head of a long table surrounded by guests from a dozen different species. They ate dishes that combined flavors from across the galaxy. They talked and laughed and argued about politics and art and the best way to prepare certain ingredients. Danny sat near the Emperor, too tired to serve but happy to watch. He had cooked the main course himself, one last time. A simple roast with vegetables and bread. Human food. The kind of meal his mother had made when he was a boy. Tasted it and closed his eyes. "Perfect," he said quietly, "as always." "Thank you," Danny said, "for everything." "I should thank you. You taught me that there is more to existence than power, that a good meal shared with others is worth more than 1,000 conquered worlds." Danny died 2 years later peacefully in his sleep. He was 97 years old. The Dragon Emperor declared a day of mourning across the entire Dominion. For the first time in history, all kitchens stopped cooking in honor of a human. They buried Danny in a garden near the palace. Had the gravestone made from the same material as his throne, but instead of bones, it was carved with a simple message in both human and languages. He fed an empire with love. Above the kitchen door, they hung a sign with words that Danny had once said during a late-night conversation. "The stomach has no pride. Fill it well, and even emperors become friends." The Scorched Dominion continued to change after Danny was gone. The Never became soft or weak. They were still warriors when they needed to be, but they had learned something important from a hungry human who had asked for leftovers. They had learned that there are many kinds of strength, that building is as valuable as destroying, that feeding can be as powerful as fighting. And every year on the anniversary of Danny's death, the Dragon Emperor would go to the kitchen himself. He would prepare a simple meal with his own claws, not a feast, not a display of power, just food made with care, shared with friends. It was what Danny would have wanted. Historians later called this period the Great Softening. They wrote long books about how the most brutal empire in the galaxy had transformed into something new. They analyzed the political and economic and social factors that had contributed to the change. But the real answer was simpler than any of their theories. It was not politics or economics or social movements that had changed it was a cook. A tired, hungry, ordinary human who had seen a feast and asked for leftovers. That is the power of humanity, not our weapons, not our technology, not our military strength. Our power is in our ability to connect, to share, to sit down with monsters and offer them bread. We are not the oldest species, we are not the strongest, we are not but we are the ones who remember that everyone needs to eat, and that a meal shared is a bridge built. That is how we survive. That is how we win.